I'm Arnold, candidate for State Senate, District 7, Wisconsin. This issue piece is about pot, marijuana, cannabis, happy plants, hippie lettuce, leafy greens, Sacagawea, all the other names that comes with it. This is a personal freedom issue, and if we regulate it like alcohol, I don't see the harm, because actually the first speech I ever did, 8 o'clock in the morning at Barstow Hall at Carroll College, which is of course way on the other side of campus, which is fine in the summertime, but the winter really sucked. Dr. Joseph Hemmer, it's the first speech I ever gave, marijuana versus alcohol, the benefits of each compared to each other, and then which one was worse. And this is back before the internet. Okay, this is 1994. So this is almost 25 years ago, a quarter century ago, where you actually had to read books, whatever was in the library, to find this stuff out. But there have been 10, and I cannot remember where it is, but I'm sure you can find it online. And it was also in the documentary, I believe it was a Food Inc. documentary. There have been 10 confirmed cases in the history of mankind of people overdosing from vitamin C. You know how many people have overdosed from marijuana? 0. It's impossible. The amount you would need, you'd pass out beforehand. Now, I'm sure you could literally force it down somebody's throat in a compact quantity, in a very potent form, and kill somebody, but you can do that with pretty much anything. People have overdosed on water, for crying out loud. So when it comes to how safe things are, it's safer than Tylenol. And basically, I think Tylenol is the only thing that you can take if you're a pregnant woman, right? I don't know. I've never been a pregnant woman, so I don't know. But overall, it's safe. You know what it does, though? It does make you lazy if you continuously do it. Because when I was in college, I was pretty much stoned for a couple of years there, 24/7. And it loses its fun. But, you still are stoned. So you get to live the world stoned. But you just don't get the giggly. You don't get the... So, it has a tendency to make you lazy. You don't want to do anything. Some people, some woman got assaulted, blah, 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 because she was stoned. No. I've woken up next to somebody, I don't even know their name. I've woken up next to Chewbacca, the human slug. Whoa. When I was drinking. Never did that on pot. Never did that on pot. Also, I have a couple of times been approached by law enforcement while under the influence. I mean, you could have blindfolded me with dental floss. My eyes were so blazed. But snapped out of that pretty quick. Oh yeah, it's allergies. Oh, the room was smoky. No problem. You can't do that when drunk. Here's another thing. My entire sophomore year, I was taking a medication that I could not drink alcohol. Literally from the week of August before that to finals weekend. I don't think I did very well in the finals that weekend, or that week. But I could drink again. And so what we would do is we pretty much, after class, we partake, as we call it. And we'd play Mortal Kombat 2 and Mario Kart. Super Mario Kart, and nonstop. And I'd always use Donkey Kong because everybody else would take Koopa and Toad, which of course is real easy. So I'd like the challenge, and I could still beat people even with Donkey Kong. His acceleration was terrible, if anybody remembers that game. But I'd still do pretty well. I'd hold my own, but even against Koopa and Toad. So I'd school people, get 20 coins, and once you got 20 coins, you're at max speed, and that was the secret with Donkey Kong, as long as you didn't hit anything. Well, I became basically a master at Super Mario Kart, even while intoxicated, herbally inebriated, shall we say. The weekend that I could finally drink again, I was all over the road, running into the water. It was horrible. It was really a lesson of, wow. I don't recommend it, driving while stoned or under the influence, but you definitely could do it 10 times better than you can with alcohol. And again, not saying this is a good thing to do. Even after my DUI, I would, only go to certain bars. I would always take the Parkway home, make sure that, nobody was around. So I would at least curb my behavior. But I can tell you hands down that being under the influence with marijuana while driving is far less risky than under the influence of alcohol. Health-wise, yeah, okay, it's smoke. So, but let's be realistic. It's not like cigarettes where you're smoking a pack a day. You're smoking a couple times a day. You get your buzz on, and that's it. There's also vapes. There's also candies and edibles and such that you can take it. And I honestly, if if we tax this, the revenue, I work with Dan Quorum from Colorado, State Senator from Colorado, talking about how they set it up, you know, the good things about it, the bad things about it, and the good far outweighs the bad. And anyone that tells you different is basically telling you that because they don't like it, they don't want it. So they're using it's almost basically the same kind of things that they would tell you about why integration shouldn't happen in the 60s. Literally. If you look at the arguments for why people are against marijuana, it's the same thing. So that should tell you right there how right it is. So there's many reasons why it should be legal, and I don't want it to be like Wisconsin was with concealed carry. I don't want to be the 48th, the second to last state to legalize this while everybody else does. And I know that Robin Voss had said, well, when the feds do something about it, we'll take it up. Well, we'll see, won't we, Robin? Trump had mentioned 2 weeks ago that things are about to come. I don't know what that is. I don't know if Sessions is on board. I don't know. But if that's the case, are we going to? I know that Walker and Schindler are totally against it. Again, one's an attorney or prosecutor. The other one is an Eagle Scout goody two-shoes. Love them both. But yeah. So again, I don't know how far this is going to get with them in control. But it's something that I do believe will, within the next 5 and definitely 10 years, it will be legal, it will be safe, it will be monitored, and you know the revenue will be used. First off, I would put it towards dealing with this opioid crisis, because when I talk to law enforcement officials, the main problem is that there's still an opioid problem, a heroin problem, because there's still addicts from being left over from when the pills were accessible. They're not now, so that has curbed, but there's still addicts. There's not enough rooms to get these addicts into treatment when they want it. So that needs to happen first, and we can use the marijuana money to offset that until that goes away, because it eventually will. Because if you look at it in the late 1960s, basically psychedelics were outlawed because, and it is true, almost every single drug, hardcore drug, was put into that Schedule I by racism. Not completely, but it was. Mexicans with the marijuana, the Chinese at San Francisco with the opium dens for the opium and heroin, and blacks with cocaine, because they would feed the freed slaves cocaine, tote that barge, lift that bale, and then but they rape white women and all this other crazy nonsense. And psychedelics, of course, were to deal with the countercultural, because the government doesn't want you to expand your mind. The government doesn't want you to understand consciousness. The government wants you to be a good little worker, good little voter, good little... They do. Corporations want that. Government wants that. Matter of fact, a lot of times, Common Core was basically there to make good little workers that didn't question anything, that didn't do critical thinking. So they don't want you to expand your mind. They want you dumbed down with alcohol, because that's a business, it's a big business that we tried to take away. But I mean, there's been alcohol since ancient Egypt. So this new drugs, obviously not, especially the psychedelics came around in the 50s, the cocaine came around in the late 19th century. You know, heroin was synthesized in the late 19th century. All this stuff was over the counter. You can give to children back at the turn of the century 100 years ago. But again, a lot of it stemmed from racism. A lot of it stemmed from Harry J. Anslinger after all these cops that were prohibition cops. It's like, well, what are we going to do with all these law enforcement people? We need a new villain, and that's when the drugs came in. Same thing with the war on drugs. Nixon needed to get rid of the counterculture, get rid of the hippies, and so he made the psychedelics illegal. War on drugs brought in Elvis, who was high as a kite. Ironically, I mean, that whole thing is almost a joke. You know, look at what Elvis was wearing. You know, oh, it was so cool, it's Elvis. But if we look at it now, so all this stuff, we need to rethink what we've done in the past, and we need to really consider what we want as in terms of our freedoms. I personally think you have the right to put anything in your body, but I'll use heroin as an example. No addict, this is coming from a former alcoholic, 10 years, okay? Been sober for 11. No addict has ever said, you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to be an addict. Every addict has said the same thing that Sam Pernicero, who was one of my professors at Parkside, who actually taught John Belushi when John Belushi was at Whitewater. And the last thing he said was, don't do drugs, kids. Don't do the hard drugs. Stay off the happy dust. Because graveyards are full of people who said it will never happen to me. That can't happen to me. whether it's age, whether it's getting pregnant, whether it's becoming an addict, whether it's, becoming broke, whether it's, losing everything in the stock market. Every single person that's happened to has said, it won't happen to me. Well, unfortunately it does. And if you see somebody over there stealing for money or, smoking pole at a train station for $5 for the next hit, and you say, well, that's not going to happen to me, but I'm still going to try this, you're taking your own life in your hands. And don't come crying to me when you're smoking pole at a train station for your next hit. Oh, but I want to get out of it. I didn't. What do you mean you didn't know? What do you mean you didn't know? You've seen examples. People around you have died. It's been on the news. It's been in the papers. It's been on social media. How do you not know this? No, you took the chance, you rolled the dice, and you failed. You rolled the dice and it came up craps. Sorry. All right, and if you have to die because of that lesson, so be it. You chose, and I want to give you that right to choose. But here's what happens. Doug Stanhope said, there's no such thing as addiction. There's just things you like doing more than living, which is true. That's kind of what addiction is. And people classify it as a disease. It is not a disease. It is a chemical imbalance at best. So why do they call it a disease? Well, you can't wake up if you have cancer and go, you know what? I don't want cancer today. I don't want it ever again. And it goes away. If you have lupus, MS, you can't wake up and say, I don't want lupus anymore. And it goes away. Those are diseases. Okay? It was a choice. It was a choice that turned into an addiction, a chemical imbalance. And this chemical imbalance says, hey, you need to do this more than you need to live. Plain and simple. And so you do it. Because if it was a disease, you couldn't control it. Because every recovered or recovering, because there were such things as recovered addict. Okay, yes, I do buy that to an extent. But a disease will not behave like that. You either have it or you don't. Now, why would they classify it as a disease? Here's why. And again, you're not going to hear this stuff from anybody else, much less any other politician. Here's the reality, and moms especially, because moms have a bond with kids that dads just don't, because they carried them for 9 months. They have it. They gave birth. They have that bond. The fathers just will never have that. And you know what? I kind of wish that somehow science would be able to give men that ability to understand what that bond is like. Because you probably have far fewer deadbeat dads. But moms especially. Because it wasn't parents against drunk driving. It wasn't dads against it. It was mothers against drunk driving. Okay? They're the force behind this. And God love them for it, but here's the problem. You've got a kid. Straight A student, never got into trouble, probably a virgin. All of a sudden, smoking pole on a train station for the next hit, stealing from mom and dad, lying, getting in trouble with the law, doing things that they would never consciously do. Because this chemical imbalance, again, says you want this more than living. You want this more than your family. You want this more than your friends. You want this more than your job. You want this more than... And because of that, if you tell a parent, well, that's a choice, they can't accept that. It is hard for them to accept. What happened to my baby? What happened to my precious baby that I held in my arms, that I taught to walk and talk? What happened to my baby? You can't tell them it was a choice, a bad choice. They can't accept it. And they can't accept that relapses happen. I mean, parents really have to go through training. People have to go through training when dealing with addicts. And, addiction, It's like, no, that person made a choice because that thing in their head told them. And unfortunately, that is the reason they classify it as a disease, because when you say, it's a disease, the parent can then go, oh, okay. And they at least accept that. Flawed as that may be, and I get it. But it also does nothing to actually help, because, it's a disease and you relapse. Okay, I understand. I live by the credo, give people second chances, but be wary of thirds. How many times are you going to relapse? Because especially with heroin, next time could be dead. So these people need to be held accountable. And this is something from an alcoholic, because once I realized, all right, I got sober because I said, you know what, I don't have all the answers. I must not have all the answers because I've tried numerous times and I just can't quit. So whatever needs to be done, AA, blah, blah, I will accept that. And once I accepted the fact that I'm technically not in control because I can't control this, That's when a situation happened to where basically I was let down by a counselor, and then it dawned on me, wait a minute, the counselor let me down. But I still had the choice of whether or not I would put that bottle to my lips. Oh my God. It's like Dorothy with the ruby slippers. She had them on the whole time. Think about that. Think about the Wizard of Oz. She had them as soon as that tornado transports to her house. Okay, obviously she had to go through everything to realize, okay, I was going to run away from home, but now I realized the home was actually a good place. Okay, there's the lesson. But there's no place like home. She had the slippers, the ruby slippers from Glinda before she walked on the yellow brick road. They came off the witch, boom, they're on her feet. And if Glinda would have said, oh, by the way, child, just click your heels 3 times and say there's no place like home, you'll go back home. First off, all right, well, obviously she's a witch, probably bad to punch her in the face, but I'd have been like, witch, bitch, bam! Why didn't you tell me that? Poppy fields and trees and scarecrows and midgets. Ah! I don't like little people. You know, I have fun with little people. I'm just saying that for, but you get my point. She had the power the whole time to click those shoes, and there's no place like home. 3 times. How simple. Click 3 times, there's no place like home. And next thing you know, she's home. All it literally takes is, nope. You gonna use? Nope. You want some booze? Nope. You want some drugs? Nope. That's how easy it is. Not rocket science, not brain surgery. We're not forming Voltron here. Here's your drug of choice. Do you want to use? No. Because once you realize that this thing, whether you believe in God, evolution, creation, whatever, this thing in here, whether you believe it creates the consciousness or it's a receptor for consciousness like a TV antenna, this thing right here is the greatest creation the universe has ever seen as far as we know. Once you realize that this thing is far more powerful than that chemical, you win. Not that difficult. We tell, and you have to have structure when it comes to addiction. You need to, get rid of the triggers. You need to rethink your steps. You need all good things. And the 12-step program, I mean, if somebody has tried, try Jesus or Allah or whoever you want, Buddha, whatever. But the key is, we as human beings have the power. We've gone to the moon. We've built the internet. Okay, we've built ships that are so big you can barely see from one end to one end that float across the ocean. The mind is the greatest tool. These things are just implements. It's just like with a gun. The gun is just a tool. Here's the weapon. Once you realize that when it comes to addiction, that's when you can get sober. And I can't stress that enough. And it's unfortunate because there's been less than 800 people have watched my healthcare video, and I've got the solution to healthcare, $2 a day for healthcare, 95% of your healthcare costs. And people go, "Well, that sounds good," but they don't watch the video. And honestly, if I get hit by a bus and die, at least this will be written down. But how many people are going to hear these words? I watched Celebrity Rehab that first season, and when they had, other seasons, when those people from the first season came back to other season, I would have literally put a skull and crossbones on the door and say, there you go. You either do this, and it works, and listen to your brain to say, no, I'm not going to use, or right there, you die. It's that simple. It's that simple. So you choose, because it is your choice. Same, that it's your choice to vote. And again, I wish I would have gotten these out sooner. And if you're watching these, you're probably watching these last minute anyway. But I felt it was important to get this out, all these issues. So I'm definitely for the legalization of marijuana, both medicinally and recreationally. Again, it's just like anything. We need to do it right. Same thing with the concealed carry. Oh, I forgot to mention that in my gun presentation. With the concealed carry loophole, drop kids off from school, and next thing you know, you're a felon because there's a loophole within the concealed carry law. We need to make sure we got people, smart people. Well, there are a lot of smart people, a lot of great people in the legislature, but we need to make sure that we're not overlooking these things, and we need to make sure we do it right. So, again, thank you for watching any and all of these. This is the last one, I think, in the list of issues. So again, my name is Red Arnold. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me at redarnold@gmail.com.